he's like, oh, he's shooting up. And I'm like, holy fuck, he's shooting up? Like with a needle? Like he's like he's injecting it with a needle? He's like, yeah, he does it in there. And I'm like, oh shit, like that's fucking nuts. That guy's a fucking addict. As I'm like snorting an 80 Oxycontin off the table, you know, that guy's a fucking addict, but not me. How I got addicted to opiates. To tell that story, I kind of got to start from the beginning of how I was as a child. Hey, what's going on, guys? I just want to say the point of the video is so that you guys can see where my mental health was the majority of my life and how I felt leading up to the first time that I used drugs and why I became addicted. And maybe you guys can relate to that pattern, or you could see that pattern in yourself, and maybe it could help. Thank you. For me, I had a great family, great parents. I had a sister, great upbringing. There was just literally like a mental screw loose when I was younger. I was a little bit chubbier of a kid, but my longest memory would be kindergarten. My longest memory is the anxiety of like wanting to fit in. Even when I was little, I assumed that nobody liked me. I assumed that I didn't fit in with anyone, and it caused me to become a habitual liar. I was a liar. That's all I did. I lied about who I was, what I could do, what I had, and it made me feel accepted by that. And I liked the response that I'd get when I would make something up and people would believe me, or at least I think they would believe me. So being a child, I felt that way all the way through middle school and high school, just constantly feeling that people didn't like me, that I didn't fit in, that I had to be a certain person or a certain thing to fit in with others. And it caused me to have serious anxiety. And at the time, I didn't know it was anxiety. I just, this is what life is. It's tough, and I would have what I would think is anxiety attacks where I would just basically freak out is what I thought it was. And I didn't know it was anxiety at the time. But I had so much anxiety just from how many lies that I told people and how many different personalities that I had to keep up with just from the friends that I made, from the lies that I told. I just never really felt in. I felt that I fit in with anybody. And that literally led up into my adult life, my younger adult life. When I was 17, I was working at a car audio shop as a salesman. And I had a little bit of a temper on me, which was kind of like mixed with the anxiety. When I would get anxious, I would get really angry. And this particular day, I had a car audio installer that I was working for. I got in an argument with him in the back, and we got to words. And I had been having problems with him for a while, and it got to the point where I was like, you know what, fuck this. I'm leaving. I'm out. And I ended up grabbing my things and I left. I've been working there for about 2 years. And my boss ended up calling me. And he's like, hey man, where did you go? Like, what's going on? What happened? He's like, come back, let's talk about it. I come back, I talk to him, I explain the situation. He's like, okay, I'll talk to him. So he goes and talks to him, works it out, smooths it out. And that car audio installer, he comes up to me, he's like, damn man, like I didn't know I upset you that bad, I didn't mean to do that. Like, you got to calm down a little bit. He's like, here, take this. And up until this, the only thing I had done was smoke pot in high school. And I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I tried it one time, and I tried it like 2 times. And each time it would put my anxiety through the roof. I was paranoid, dry mouth. I hated everything about it. It didn't make me feel good. So this car audio installer says, hey, calm down. And he's like, just take this. And me being a fucking idiot, I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll take a pill from This guy that doesn't have teeth, you know, that works in the back. I pop it. And about 15 minutes later, I had this pill hit me where this, I like to call like this tornado that I had in my chest for years, even as a child. My anxiety, like when my anxiety would build up and I'd be anxious, I would get this horrible pressure in my chest. I felt it just melt away, just completely melt away. Hold on, guys. I gotta turn around here. Made a wrong turn. Hopefully these people don't think I'm trying to pull into their driveway. I hate when people pull in my driveway. I got dogs that absolutely go insane. Anybody that's got dogs, they know what's up about cars driving in your driveway. Anyways, I got this smooth feeling that came over me, and I was immediately calm. It was a calm that like I've never felt before in my life. And it was like the greatest feeling that I had ever felt in my 17 years of my life. And I was like, oh my God, like this is, what is this? Like this is the answer to all my problems. I was able to talk. I felt comfortable around people. I wasn't anxious. I didn't have any worries. It was like a magic miracle pill that had been evading me my whole life. And I asked the guy, I'm like, what did you give me, man? Like, I feel amazing. And he's like, oh, I gave you a Percocet. And I was like, a Percocet? Like, what is that? He's like, it's a pain pill. I was like, a pain pill? I was like, man, I feel amazing. This is great. So, legitimately the next day, I asked him, I came to work, I asked him, I was like, hey man, can you get more of those pills? He's like, yeah, for sure, I can get more of those pills. I bought a couple pills off of him. I bought a couple 30 perks off of him. And from there on, I was taking one every day. I'd pop a pill, and I was like, my sales were going up. I felt more comfortable talking to people. I felt people like me. I could connect with people. See, I'm always like a very like anxious person and an introvert. Is that what it is? I think it's introvert. He doesn't like to be around a lot of people. I was always like that. And when I took this Percocet, I was like, oh my God, I can be around tons of people, and I could talk in groups, and I could concentrate on stuff. Because before, like, it was so hard for me just to like focus in and concentrate on things. I couldn't do it. But on Percocet, I could concentrate. I could be social. I could be calm. I felt good. And that kept rolling day after day. And I probably kept that going for about 2 weeks. And then I was like, I was telling him, I was like, man, these things are expensive. Like, I feel like it doesn't last very long. And he's like, oh, well, you got to start snorting them, you know? Like, he's like, I crush them down and I snort them. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, are you fucking nuts? Like, before then, like, I hadn't done any cocaine. All I did was smoke pot. I'm like, man, you fucking start snorting stuff? Are you crazy? I'm like, I'm just taking this health pill to feel better. I'm not doing drugs. That's what I'm saying in my head, you know, not having a clue what I'm actually getting myself into. So me being an idiot, he's like, it'll be way more intense. You'll like it way more. He's like, just try it. He crushed down a 30 milligram pill for me, let me snort it, and it was literally all fucking downhill from there. All downhill. It was every single day from there on out that I had to have that pill. And I hadn't gone a day without it for at least a couple months. Because I was making money. I had enough money to support myself at work. But then it got to a point where I had to take more than I could afford. And I'm spending all my money on these fucking pills. And I'm trying to make extra money elsewhere. I'm stealing things, trying to sell them to get money to buy more drugs. And at that time, I was buying like 100 Vicodin off him and like a bunch of 30 Percocets off of him. And that would only last me like, like a week or two, because I was eating like 7 to 8 Vicodin at a time where I'd like break them in half and then I would swallow them. And he's like, hey man, like they have this thing called Oxycontin and it'll last a little bit longer. It's a lot stronger and you can get more bang for your buck. So I was like, fuck yeah, dude. Like, why didn't you say something sooner? Like, let's get some of that shit. So I picked up, I think it was a couple 40 Oxycontins and an 80 Oxycontin. And I took the whole 40 and I crushed it down. I was like, oh, I can do a whole 30 milligram Percocet. And I crushed it down and I snorted that 40 and I was throwing up within 10 minutes, just vomiting. And I was like, oh my God, what the fuck is this? I was just violently ill. But as soon as that nausea subsided, and as soon as it calmed down, I was like, oh my God, what is this? Like, this is fucking dangerous. Because at the time, I still didn't think I was addicted to anything. I was just like, man, I'm just taking this pill to be normal just like everybody else. I didn't even think about it as using drugs. I was like, I'm just taking this prescription pill for pain. That's not a drug. Cocaine's a drug. Meth's a drug. Heroin's a drug. Having no clue the similarities between like heroin and Oxycontin. I was just completely fucking stupid, And I had this literally fucking piece of shit dude that it almost seems like to this day that he like purposely got me fucking addicted to these pills. Like, real piece of shit. I can't blame other people for my stupidity, but the way he was pushing this on me was fucking ridiculous. So Oxycontin moved into buying 80s, and then I was doing a couple 80s a day, and then that wasn't enough. And then I ended up meeting this guy that was shooting it. I was going to a house, an Oxycontin dealer house. This is a buddy of mine that I knew, and he was sold to tons of different people. And there was always this weird guy that would show up and go in the bathroom. And we'd be like, what the fuck's that guy doing in there? We're all snorting oxys outside. We're like, what's that guy doing in there? And he's like, oh, he's shooting up. And I'm like, holy fuck, he's shooting up? Like with a needle? Like he's shooting, he's like injecting it with a needle? And he's like, yeah, he does it in there. And I'm like, oh shit, like that's fucking nuts. That guy's a fucking addict. Because I'm like snorting an 80 Oxycontin off the table. That guy's a fucking addict, but not me. He's the bad one. So that happened for like a couple weeks until finally I asked the guy, I'm like, what's up with that, man? Like, what does it feel like? Is it cool? He's like, hey man, you want me to do it for you? And I was like, fuck yeah, dude. Like, absolutely. Like, and I was scared, completely scared of needles, but I was like, man, like I for sure want to feel what this feels like. So I ended up having him shoot the Oxycontin. And that's literally where all of my hopes, everything in my life, my dreams, my family, fucking everything just went out the window. As soon as that needle went in and I felt that drug hit me and I got the rush off of it, I knew it was fucking over for me. I was like, this is just the greatest fucking feeling I've ever felt in my entire life. And I'll never be able to fucking go back. Ever. And I kept doing that. And I think it was 2009 or 2010. Might have been like 2010. They took Oxycontin off the market. And they made it like they rebranded it or they put it into a new formula called like the OPs where like you couldn't break them down and snort them anymore. And that was like super tough because all of a sudden I was on like 160 milligrams to 240 milligrams of oxys a day, or basically whatever I could afford. And those ended up going up to like $100 a pill, because they were scarce. Nobody could get them. And at that time, I wasn't making a lot of money, and I couldn't afford that. So like I would just buy what I could get, and then whatever I could steal on the side and sell and get money for, or try to steal from somebody else, or whatever I could do to get my medicine. So when those went off the market, I was talking to some buddies, and they were also using heroin on the side. And I was like, what the fuck? And I still, at that point, had no idea the correlation between Oxycontin and heroin. Essentially, pretty much being the same fucking thing. And in my mind, I still thought I wasn't a drug addict. Shooting fucking Oxycontins and snorting Oxycontins, but I'm not a drug addict because I'm not doing heroin. Everybody knows how that goes. And my buddy ended up giving me a dime bag of heroin. He's like, try this, dude. This will help you with the sickness. And same thing, I already knew how to shoot up, from the Oxycontins. And I shot that up. And it was a $10 bag. And at that time before, I was shooting up 80 milligrams of Oxycontin for $100. $100. And I go from $100 to $10. And I'm like, what the fuck is this going to do? And I shot that up, and I was so fucked up. The rush I got was so fucking amazing that, again, I told myself I'm in so much fucking trouble. So much. And then my heroin addiction kept going on. But the point of this story is that my addiction, it didn't come from the want to do bad. It didn't come from the want to like do drugs or to be, cool or whatever, smoke pot or do coke or like fit in with other people or like rebel. Mine happened on accident. I had underlying issues when I was younger that for some reason pain pills fixed for me temporarily. And a lot of people have this now, where they'll have anxiety or depression, and they turn to the alcohol and they turn to the drugs to help with it. But they're not treating the core problem. And my core problem is that I hated myself so much that when I was finally able to mask it on accident, I thought that was the answer. And it wasn't the answer. And you guys got to be careful with that stuff. You got to be working on yourself daily and trying to build a better you and trying to bring yourself up. Because I know there's a lot of people in sobriety that suffer from anxiety and depression. And I know there's a lot of people that have anxiety and depression that are thinking about doing drugs. And you got to be careful about that medicating a problem, because that right there becomes addictive. You got to find some sort of positive medication to treat yourself.